Hello to you all. Today we have a video about longevity and autophagy. We are going to return to the basics of fasting. In the news, we have returned from Spain. There are still testimonials. We have not posted all of them. There are people who will appear on the channel, including translations for English speakers, because people from all over the world come to our retreats. Because the method that we have developed is truly unique. You will not find anything equivalent to it. Even in Russia, there was no update. They stay physical. We go much further. We have incorporated new dimensions into the personal work. There is also focus on nutrition and food reintroduction, things not done elsewhere. This is our knowledge. Today, we discuss autophagy. In the news for our retreat, there are still a few spots left for this summer. It is a retreat on the Franco-Swiss border, in the mountains, in a very pure location, a wild setting, which leads to regeneration. It is a place that is very pleasant, with breathtaking landscapes, a very pleasant setting, with two options. For those wanting the chalet, there are few spots left. For those who want to go for more comfort, there is a hotel next door. It is a very comfortable mountain hotel. For those who want comfort and companions, there is this hotel. You can go for walks. There are even chair lifts to take you up. For people who do not want to walk around, it is a very nice region. The Porte du Soleil, for those who know it. This follows this retreat. Spots remain. Then we go to Montenegro late September at our usual place. The period that I have chosen is ideal because it is neither too cold nor too hot. This lets us take remineralizing baths after the dry fast, which is quite nice. It's the only place for swimming where the water is warm. At this time of year, we have water that can reach 26, 27 degrees. After that, we move on to Colombia, where we go for Americans, English speakers, and those from the American continent. It is Colombia, so it is a small format. We do not have everything, the equipment to bring there. It's a small retreat in a beautiful region by the sea. Next year, a big novelty, we open Italy. We go to a magnificent place, a monastery about 1.5 to 2 hours from Rome, in the north of Rome, a place near a lake. I look forward to discovering it. It will be a first in this location, really a place very spiritual, nice for walks, perhaps the best place that we will have for people who want to walk around. A place that is really very nice in this monastery, close to a lake. It will be really a beautiful place in any case. That will say next year. That's the news. Today we talk about autophagy and cellular regeneration, because today, of course, fasting, we are still not very well understood by science. Even though we really have a method that is interesting, with or without pathologies, if we want longevity, biohacking, etc., dry fasting is number one of all therapies. Indeed, biohackers talk a little about fasting, about caloric restriction, but they do not have the knowledge in dry fasting. They never talk about it. I am going to talk about it. So we are talking about regeneration, talking about stem cells that are optimal. So those who really want to slow down aging or even have a bit of an immortality effect, It is to place dry fasting retreats in your life. Then you will see you have an endogenous production of natural stem cells, and then you really do a rejuvenation. So we know it, we see it well through the people we see arriving in the retreats. There is a before, there is an after, and we especially see people who come back every year. We see it clearly in terms of their vitality, their physical form, really all the benefits of placing this dry fast. Because we have effects that other types of fasting cannot achieve. We will talk about autophagy and cellular repair, all that links to longevity, well-being, and aging well. The key to health is to be able to reach a very advanced age without pain, without problems, without inflammation, with a still sufficient energy level. You can reach an age, we have very old people in retreats because they understood that fasting is the therapy, and then which allows one to also let go of things in one's life to bring up emotions that are crystallized. So there is this double synergy of physical work, but also work on oneself, mental work, even spiritual, for people who are interested in that. Dry fasting really brings these dimensions, which are rarely reached in other types of fasts, because we do not become aware of it in the retreats, and then people remain on the surface. But we bring this dimension through the coaches who work with me, and then we try to create an atmosphere precisely of a group, with a group strength, with links where we are in mutual aid, and we are in an opening of heart and emotion. So we really try to go into this paradigm in depth, to go precisely to make traumas emerge, old wounds coming to the surface. There is just to pick that and then discharge that during the retreat, and everything is done in fact all by itself, naturally. And then there are people who are not ready. We have people who come who are not ready for all that. They come for the physical, or they already want to see what dry fasting is, and well, we accept, no problem. But today in our retreats, we no longer accept people who cannot do 3 days of dry fasting at home. So that is a prerequisite we set now, because otherwise it creates problems in the group dynamic when people are too advanced. We have people very advanced in dry fasting who come to our retreats once or twice a year, who come for their health. Well, if we have people who are unprepared, there is a difference that is too important. So we just want people to be able to do at least 3 days of dry fasting to come to us. If you are not able to do that, you are not going to get much out of it. If we have to stop you after 24 or 36 hours of dry fasting, it creates group complications. People see food and it stimulates them. So we ask now, in the preparations for dry fasting, I have now reworked the plan. For the people who have been coming since this year, we have new preparations that I have developed, which are even more refined than what you have in the book. These are the latest details I added. What is in the book is correct and works, but we have moved to another dimension with improvements and updates. I am constantly updating the preparations. We add little things and make corrections based on the people. When people arrive at the retreats, we see things that tell us, I forgot this, I forgot that, I must consider this parameter. Such a micronutrient will be useful at the end to provide that. These are all reasonings, refinements that we make over the course of the retreats over the years that improve. For thousands of years, fasting has been practiced in all spiritual, religious, medical traditions, etc. What interests researchers now is this notion of autophagy. But we still do not have enough studies available. We are asking for studies, especially in dry fasting. We need that. I am the first to collaborate with people who want to start studies. If a scientist or a doctor were interested in this, we could collaborate. I do not write papers. It is not my field to produce papers to put on PubMed. I am not an administrator. I am not a doctor either. However, we have the experience, we know how to help people with pathologies, and we know how to do prevention. We know how to help people emotionally and work on certain things. We have the experience, but we are not scientists. So when we stop providing energy to the body, the organism shuts down a step. You enter fasting mode, and then it activates biological programs, sophisticated adaptation, survival, cellular maintenance. These are the key principles of fasting. First, we see the metabolic change of fasting arrive. When we eat frequently, the body functions mainly on glucose, insulin, which remains constantly high. If you eat carbohydrates 3 times a day, you never have lipolysis, you are always in insulin, you create inflammation, and you store. You do growth, you do cellular reproduction. And then you are never in a repair phase. So, for people who eat a lot of starchy foods, a lot of things like that, fasting, in particular dry fasting, must really be implemented. In any case, for retreats, whether it is long or short, you must fast, you must do autophagy, otherwise you will accelerate your aging and create pathologies. After several hours without food or calories, the body reduces insulin. You have an increase in lipolysis, in the use of fats that comes. Ketone bodies are produced after 16 to 18 hours. You have started to have a little bit of ketone bodies. And then after, you enter into a phase with a peak that occurs at about between the 4th and 5th day of fasting. You really have this sedative, powerful antidepressant effect of ketone bodies that will activate metabolic pathways linked to repair. So insulin drops, lipolysis and fat burning create energy, beta oxidation, etc. You are going to do the big cleaning. Autophagy comes into play. This cellular cleaning, which means to self-digest, to self-eat oneself. It is a mechanism, we have already talked about it several times, natural, by which cells recycle their damaged components. They eliminate defective proteins, destroy worn-out structures, and recover materials to produce energy. It is the key principle of fasting, this autophagy. It is a period to do some cleaning. We have 2 periods that work well, spring and autumn, but in summer we are also quiet. We can also give ourselves a cleaning and rejuvenation boost for the cells. In midsummer it does not hurt. This autophagy mechanism was highlighted by a Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2016. Maybe I will put links to some studies on everything I discuss. Under the video, I will see what I find and I will put the links for you a little bit. These researchers studied the potential role of autophagy in aging and neurodegenerative mechanisms, as well as metabolic health and certain inflammatory diseases. We have mTOR involved. It is the growth mode. When we eat, when we are feeding, we are in growth mode. It is good to understand this to understand the effects of fasting. We need to discuss this mTOR pathway that acts as a detector of abundance. When we eat a lot of protein, sugar, and many calories, it will stimulate this cellular growth, perform protein synthesis, and store energy. And we are in cellular proliferation. mTOR equals cellular growth. It is, of course, essential for life, but when this pathway is activated permanently for years on end, Researchers show us that this leads to accelerated aging and metabolic diseases and chronic inflammation. We create all sorts of diverse and varied pathologies through mTOR. The point is to be able to place periods of fasting, whether short fasts, or to work on this pathway periodically, but also to work on nutrition so as not to trigger this proliferation mechanism, which is too important, by mTOR, which will promote an overflow, too much anabolism. During fasting, mTOR activity decreases when we have fasting cures. The aim is to bring down this marker of growth, and the body temporarily leaves the constant growth mode to favor more of an internal state of maintenance, recycling, autophagy, and repair. We have the AMPK, the protein kinase, which intervenes, which is the antagonist, telling us the battery is low, we must choose another way, which is an energy sensor whose reserve decreases during fasting. We must activate this kinase, which pushes the organism to save energy, to burn more fat, and to improve metabolic efficiency. That is why we are very effective in everything that is type 2 diabetes, congestion, big bellies, big fat, the swimming, fatty liver, and so on. All these diseases of congestion and excess dry fasting through the activation of protein kinase AMPK will degrease all that, will clean the organs in depth by autophagy. You have a therapy that is number one, which all doctors should be interested in practicing. A medicine via fasting. Fasting clinics should be everywhere. In Europe it should be known, but unfortunately it is not. In Germany it is not really fasting. I do not know exactly, but it is mostly juice diets. It mimics fasting. It is not fasting. We have interesting mechanisms, but it is not a full fast because you have about 400 calories per day. Some centers give less, but glucose still enters. They say we must give glucose to avoid muscle loss. I do not really agree with that. There are still studies that show that even with water fasting you do not lose muscle. I know even less. You have no muscle loss. We validated it. We clearly saw it. There are people who came to our treatments who did impedance metrics, who measured their lean mass before fasting and measured it a month later. There was even a slight increase in lean mass, but there was still an increase. We are really in a myth to think that we need glucose to be able to spare proteins. That is not what we saw in any case. AMPK plays a truly major role in the activation of autophagy. The goal is to find the balance between the two. Fasting acts thanks to a change in biological balance. Important. We lower mTOR, we increase the AMPK, protein kinase increases. We gradually activate the systems of maintenance, cleaning, and cellular repair. That is really it, AMPK and mTOR. We arrive at an autophagy when we mix both. It is a version researchers are now interested in. Fasting, in studies on longevity, health, and aging. Then we have mitophagy, cleaning mitochondria. It is a phenomenon that must be taken into account if we have aging mitochondria. This mitophagy is really activated during the fasting. With age, some mitochondria become less efficient, producing more oxidative stress. Elderly people are interested in fasting to recycle, to make new mitochondria, to keep good energy until a certain advanced age. I have the oldest one, 86 years old, and we have more and more elderly people who have understood this phenomenon and who want to do prevention and age in good health until the end. Fasting promotes this mitophagy. Mitophagy allows eliminating certain dysfunctional mitochondria, and we promote their renewal. This interests research for aging, for neurodegenerative diseases, for cellular energy. We also have sirtuins and DNA repair. Fasting can also influence these proteins called sirtuins, sirtuin 1 mainly. These proteins participate in DNA repair, inflammation regulation, stress adaptation, and energy metabolism. These sirtuins are often studied in research on longevity. Fasting is an interesting tool regarding these sirtuins. Oxidative stress and natural defenses, the body makes free radicals. When in excess, these molecules will damage cell membranes, proteins, and DNA. Certain research studies show that fasting could improve antioxidant defenses, cellular resistance, and protection. The principle is based on moderate stress that forces the organism to become more resistant. This is known as the famous law of hormesis. Another phenomenon that is key after autophagy involves stem cells and regeneration. When you end a fast, you have a mass production of stem cells that will repair them over the 3 to 4 weeks following a fast. That is why diet is fundamental during that specific period. We do not give sugar after dry fasting because you will restart insulin, re-trigger inflammation after a dry fast. That is what I explained to our Russian friends. I worked with them, with certain people in particular. They do not want to change their model. They want to stick to the old one. Unfortunately, when you provide things that are not suitable when breaking a fast, such as compotes, it is the fructose, you are adding fruit sugar, you directly recreate inflammation and storage, and you restart pathogens. So giving fructose-based liquids recreates storage, causes fatty liver, and restarts all inflammatory mechanisms. And then you immediately cut off ketosis, you cut off the beneficial mechanisms in the fast. Autophagy is stopped or slowed down. Therefore, we do not give glucose if possible for 3 to 4 days. We let the body recover digestive sugars and hydrochloric acid. All digestive enzymes will recover. We do not need to give sugar or carbs after dry fasting. We give light proteins when ending a dry fast for construction, to rebuild, but we do not give things that are sugar-based, carbohydrate-based, inflammatory. Unfortunately, I would have explained all of that, but we do not give milk kefir. Milk is inflammatory and will inflame the mucosa. It will accelerate dysbiosis afterwards. These are things I tested at the time, 7 to 8 years ago, and saw it failed. People had digestive issues after dry fasting. It is due to carbs, to sugary things, which create digestive disorders. I tested that and saw it did not work. We had several groups, and since we stopped it, there are no more digestive problems. They say it is normal to have some gurgling or issues when ending a fast while giving carbohydrates, and then they give sorbents. So it is completely aberrant because sorbents are chemical things that aim to have a laxative effect on the digestive tract, and then it is chemical things that will create a kind of artifice. Since food reintroduction is poorly done and digested, it causes digestive problems. And we will report an improvement by taking products to be able to clean that out. To be able to make a laxative, make a flush because we cannot digest well, there is reflux, there is perhaps gurgling, and then we give these sorbents which will have an effect to empty the intestines, but it is not done naturally. So for me, it does not hold up. This strategy does not work. Anyway, that is what we see in Russia because they have not looked well into these things on the dietary plan. It was a small digression, but it is for me essential not to give carbohydrate things when ending a dry fast. After we could still say other things about it, but we see in Russia a lot of promotion of buckwheat, which unfortunately is full of oxalates and lectins. So these anti-nutrients bother the digestive tract, so it is not appropriate. So we really have things that we had to take back. We had to rework everything we had seen in the fast for a long time and bring science, common sense, and digestible things because after dry fasting, you need something very digestible. So, as not to create gas blockages, it must be done in a very progressive way, and then all that is our domain. We studied the most suitable foods. So these stem cells, they are given metabolically by the body and they are pluripotent. So you have a regeneration that occurs via these stem cells, repairing organs and systems. You repaired everything. Your metabolism and organism will repair itself. As soon as you finish the dry fasts, and then this repair system is unique. You do not need to buy stem cell injections, I do not know. 5,000 euros an injection to repair. You produce it yourself. That is the benefit of dry fasting. You produce 3 to 5 times more stem cells than water fasting. So 1 day of dry fasting is 3 to 4 days of water fasting. So there is an interest in dry fasting. Even short, you have the benefit. After the stem cells, if you only do 1 day, you do not necessarily get many, especially if you need a dry fast. Still from 3 days, you start to have stem cells that arrive below that. We do not have stem cells, but a 3-day dry fast has great benefits. In mice, some researchers have observed a reduction in certain older immune cells, followed by a regeneration phase after refeeding. Most of the most impressive results have been produced in studies on animals. Cellular studies or preliminary research in humans, but it is mainly on animals that research has been conducted. Dry fasting, why does it intrigue people so much? We have AMPK activation. You truly have this reduction in mTOR and certain mechanisms of autophagy that are being relaunched. So we are looking at a dry fast that will work on all these phenomena. You don't do Genesec just anyway. There are guidelines because if it is well done, we try to ensure maximum safety in our support. But I still hear of people going elsewhere to other centers, and problems arise because they want to impose things on the same distances for everyone, and it doesn't work. A dry fast must be individualized and personalized. We must monitor the person and their markers during the fast. We cannot just let people go about walking all day long and then wait for the work to be done. That is not dry fasting. Dry fasting really requires focus on each person. We track their markers. It is attentive work. On a holistic side regarding the person, we create group synergies. We try to really bring comfort. There is an atmosphere that must be created in a group, and then that is true that it is our trademark that you will not necessarily find when you go to other locations. So there you go, what science really says about longevity. It is not just fasting, it is working mainly on a balanced diet, on sleep, on physical activity, on stress management, on metabolic health, on a reduction of carbohydrates mainly. These are really the points for me the most important. Afterwards, you shouldn't fall into the excess of sport and then not do enough. If you just do 1 kilometer of walking per day, it is not enough. You must create perspiration. You must create some cardiovascular flexibility. So that requires a bit more at the physical and sporting food level. I recommend you be followed by a nutritionist, but not people who put you in complicated and restrictive diets. But if we don't give you animal proteins, I think it doesn't necessarily work well. That is my reasoning. That is all for this video. There is no serious scientist. Claims prolonged fasting guarantees health, stops aging, or ensures extreme longevity. So the human fast does possess internal sophisticated mechanisms of adaptation, of recycling, of repair, of energy optimization, but during certain periods of energy restrictions, several biological pathways are set in action. So we talked about it. We have autophagy, AMPK, mTOR, mitophagy, cellular repair circuits. What have I forgotten to mention? The optimization of mitochondria, autophagy, and certain mechanisms linked to regeneration by stem cells. And then all these discoveries open exciting perspectives in the field of research, longevity, anti-aging, metabolic care, cell health, but we really need science to come and provide the proof of everything that we know, because in an empirical way, we see the results we have in the field. We see people arriving with diverse and varied problems. We also see the problems of people having depressions, psychic issues. The effect of cures on these people is what surprises me most regarding effectiveness on inflammation, pains, fibromyalgia, Lyme disease, people who have rheumatism, pains, that we know that it works very, very well. But what surprises me the most is really when we have people who have depressions, neurotic disorders, people who have somewhat psychotic disorders. I would say mild, because there you go. I find that this dry fasting therapy, we really see when the person comes out of the dry fast, there is really a before and an after. It is really something for me that attracts me a lot. That's all for today. I've spoken enough. See you in the next video. Bye bye.